I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside, it's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off-road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off-road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show. Today on the James Altucher Show.
When I first moved to New York City, it was 1994. I lived there as a child, but then I went away for school, and then I came back. And I felt really lonely. In a city of 8 million people, sometimes you see all these people and you want to connect with them, and I just didn't know how. 7 years later, I went broke, and I felt really lonely again because I was so ashamed of what had happened to me. And then I was getting a divorce. I felt really lonely again. And many times during my life, you feel this deep loneliness, as if there is a storm and it just shipwrecks you somewhere and you're all by yourself. I brought on Unni Turrettini, who's been on the podcast before. She wrote a book called Betraying the Nobel Prize, but now she has a course on loneliness. She has some really interesting insights. Sometimes even when you have friends, I'll go to a networking event and I just won't be able to talk to anybody. There's all types of loneliness, and she has some really good solutions and ways to deal with it. So there's a part 1 and a part 2, but they're both downloaded today. I hope you enjoy. Today, Unni, we're talking about loneliness. You have written stuff, you've done videos, you have a course on loneliness. I have an outline of it. Why did you do a course on loneliness? Because it's by the way, it's such an important topic, and it's a really important topic for me. Like I'll describe it in a little bit, like maybe you could help me in the different types of loneliness I have felt even recently or in my life. But why did you make this course on loneliness?
You know, loneliness has been a big part of my life from I was a little girl, actually. My family moved around a lot in Norway when I was growing up. And so I always kind of felt out of place. We were different places because my dad's job. And then so I would be in a new school. I would speak the wrong dialect. I was kind of not like the others. So I felt like an outsider a lot of the time and had to sort of make a new foundation wherever we lived. And it was, back in those days, people didn't move around so much like they do today, right? So They had their family, they had their friends from, generations in the same town. And so I was kind of the only one who didn't have that. So I felt a little bit sort of out of place and lacked belonging. I felt a bit rootless. And so loneliness was a big part of my life then. And then I also felt different.
So like when you moved around from place to place and you were trying to make friends, there was kind of the group of kids that, I mean, people in Norway don't really move around so much, I imagine. I don't know if you were moving around Norway or the world, but little kids can be mean. And if they grow up together and there's a new person and that person's the outsider and hence the victim, the one they can pick on, is that what you experienced a lot?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So I experienced that. And then even after, I kind of, when I was in my teens, we kind of stabilized and we moved right outside of Oslo, the capital. And so we lived there and, things stabilized and I changed my dialect, again, and spoke like the other kids and tried to be like the other kids. But I still felt very much different from other people. And I think I was just trying to fit in, trying to be like other people growing up and being, even as a young woman. And that is really, it's a kind of a different kind of loneliness when you kind of forget about yourself, you lose connection with yourself.
Yeah.
Trying to fit in and trying to be liked and trying to do all the right things that you think the other people are going to approve of. That has always sort of stayed with me. And then I moved abroad. First of all, I was an exchange student in high school. Through this exchange program, they sent me to Kansas City, Kansas. So I spent a year there and that was really fun. And, but I was always, always the sort of the outsider and the different one there too. And then I came back again and I decided, as soon as I can, I'm going to study abroad. So I started studying law in Norway. And then in the middle of my law studies, I moved to Paris and decided to learn French and study law there too. So that's what I did. And I kind of, after that...
Well, aren't you the overachiever?
Yeah, right. But that's another thing about my loneliness too, is that because I had this like emptiness inside of me, this hole that I was trying to fill. And I became this sort of overachiever, perfectionist, trying to prove my relevance or worth,
Right. Like, I mean, I feel like I could sue people in every country now with you by my side. Like that. No, everybody's going to want to be our friend if I'm just suing people in Paris and Oslo and...
Yeah. Maybe that's not a good strategy for making connection.
Probably not. Like, I think people try, but to be fair, people try that strategy. People try to get positions of power because then, status gets you friends.
Yeah. Right. And that,
fear.
I really do think that is, we try to prove our relevance and prove our worth by showing power, right? And even the same, it's a little bit the same with me too. I was trying to prove, with all these, degrees and then career and titles and even collecting people. I mean, I was out networking and meeting people. So I have a good network, pretty much all over the world because I lived in different places. But even that didn't fill up that emptiness that I had inside because I was so disconnected from myself. So I think that's an important aspect of the whole loneliness is that disconnection. And I think we see that in society a lot around us, right? How that disconnection manifests.
Right, because there's this other issue. First off, I like how you say there's multiple kinds of loneliness. I think people think loneliness is just when you're not around people or you don't have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, so you're at home at night a lot and by yourself, and then you feel lonely. But it could mean a lot of different things. And like, for instance, in COVID, there was this particularly extreme kind of loneliness. Like, I wonder, what was it like for the people who just didn't really know people in their city and were living by themselves and they weren't dating anybody, or maybe they didn't have family around, and they just they were just locked in their apartment for a year from from all the COVID lockdowns. Like, what happened to them?
I think it's been, I think we haven't even really seen the consequences of that, of the social isolation, because it's really detrimental to our well-being, being lonely. It has consequences to our overall health, both physical and mental health. So, we know that our immune system decreases. So we are more prone to get sick when we are lonely, because we feel miserable. And this is research done, and someone who's done a lot of research on this is Vivek Murthy, Dr. Vivek Murthy, who is, I believe, he is again the U.S. Surgeon General. He was under Obama, and now I think he is again under Biden. So he's done a lot of research on loneliness and connection, and he says that it's really detrimental. It's more dangerous to our physical health to be lonely than obesity and smoking.
Really?
Yeah, or smoking 15 cigarettes per day.
Why is that? I mean, I believe you when you say it, like it makes sense. But when you link it to something specific like obesity, which is always linked to so many major diseases, what does it cause? What diseases does it cause? Or I don't know how to ask.
Yeah, the way, we human beings we're social beings, right? So we are hardwired in our brain to be in a community, to live in a community. And we've kind of lost that sort of sense of tribe and community. And that started already in, when we, in the Industrial Revolution. That's when we sort of lost that sense of, people would move to places for work, and we lost, we sort of were spread out, and we lost that sense of the importance of the community, which can also be, I have to say, detrimental as well when you are not considered valuable as an individual. That's something that we have a little bit here in Norway, at least when I was growing up, that you only matter as part of the tribe, as part of the group, as part of society, but as an individual, you're not valuable. Whereas I think today it has maybe gone overboard with the individualistic, society, that it's all about like me, see me, me, all, and how we have undermined the importance of community, and that we don't know our neighbors. We don't know the people who live around us in our near, community. And so we see that in places where people actually have a strong sense of community, and these are called, and they have actually, there's certain places around the world called the blue zones. I don't know if you've heard of those, right?
I've had on Dan Buettner, who's the author of that.
Amazing. Yeah, he's amazing. He's done some awesome research.
So I'll describe real quickly for the listeners, even though I knew you were about to do it. I'm sorry for interrupting. But it's basically these 7 areas he identified around the world where people live with a high quality of life to over the age of 100. So there's a statistically high number of people living over the age of 100 compared with every other area in the world. So there's like 7 of these blue zones. And one of them, a lot of it was, and so he would say like Okinawa in the, was a blue zone. And what's their diet? What do they do? What are their habits? And but all of the areas, everybody was kind of demographically the same, except for one area, which was Aventura, California. It was the only place in the United States. Yeah. And what linked, and he couldn't figure it out at first because they had different diets and they had different this. But what happened is that Aventura is kind of the home of the a religious sect called the Seventh-day Adventists. And I think it was every Saturday, they go hiking together. And that sense of community, he figured, plus the exercise, is what helped people avoid loneliness, and hence they lived longer.
Yeah, right? So we should all be in a sect.
Yeah. It's not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea.
But we know that being in a group makes people happy.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. It's really important to feel that you're part of a group, and I think that's what we've lost when you look at the polarization in our society. That's because people don't feel part of the larger group, right? And that is a kind of loneliness. So Dr. Vivek Murthy says is that there are sort of three levels of loneliness. The first level is the intimate emotional level, which is having a spouse or a partner or like a best friend. And then you have the second level, which is the relational sort of level of connection, which we need to have a larger group of friends. And then the third level is the collective. And I think that's where we get the polarization when we stop, we don't maybe trust leadership. We feel that leadership our government doesn't have our best interests at heart. All these things, which I also touched upon in my book about the Nobel Peace Prize and why it is so important to trust in leadership. And we need all three.
Do you think we need all three? Like let's say you have a loving partner and you guys live out in the woods and you don't really hang out with friends and you don't really feel like you belong to any collective community. Will you start to feel lonely there, or?
I think it depends on the person. I have actually experienced exactly what you're saying there, because when I was living in Switzerland, my husband is Swiss, and we lived in Geneva. And then when our son was firstborn, we decided to move up to the Swiss mountains. So we moved up there. My husband was traveling a lot.
That's gotta be super boring.
Exactly. And I stopped working. I was working in finance at the time, and I was used to traveling around and taking groups of investors to see what we invested in, and to and traveling and being to Russia, to New York, and all these places. And then all of a sudden, at home with a newborn, in a place where I didn't really know any people, and there were a lot of cows, but that was pretty much it. And my husband was away traveling for long periods at the time, and I felt miserable. And I sort of I had everything that I wanted. I thought I had a good life. I had a husband who loved me, and a child that I loved more than anything. And yet I was extremely lonely. So I think, at least for me, it wasn't enough to have just the loving husband and the child. I need to have people around me. Like, I need to have some sort of community.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love these clothes. Mizzen and Main. That's Mizzen and Main. It really is the most comfortable work clothes. Travel clothes. I had to travel this whole week. I'm traveling for a week and a half, and I just took Mizzen and Main clothes with me. Close out 2023 in style with comfortable, breathable, packable, and machine washable pieces from Mizzen and Main. As you wrap up your year-end goals, enjoy a Mizzen and Main dress shirt that you can wear confidently. I like that they've very, very just nice, solid colors. I don't really like to get all fancy in patterns and everything, although they do have some pattern shirts, but very comfortable clothes, stretchable pants. It's just super comfortable, but they look professional, and you can wear them casually or professionally. I like some of their flannel shirts or untuck shirts. I love untuck. I never tuck in. So again, whether you're shopping for a special someone or giving yourself the gift you really want, I just buy myself gifts. Mizzen and Main is the perfect gift for any guy who works, travels, and cares about looking and feeling great. As you could tell by my many photos across the internet, I care about looking fantastic. I'm practically a model. And let's be honest, every guy loves to look great. So again, shop now at mizzenandmain.com and save 20% when you spend $130 or more using promo code James. That's promo code James at Mizzen and Main, Mizzen and Main.com. You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like, the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list, because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get two memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply. I wanted to describe, because I feel like, so, and then we'll talk about solutions for loneliness, because this is such an important issue. Like you say, it's not just about being happy and avoiding depression and so on. It's actually about physical health. And like people literally have heart attacks when they're lonely.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of like two different kinds of loneliness, but they represent some of the extremes you were talking about. Like I remember when I first time I had made some money selling a business, and then I went totally broke. I was living in the place I had always lived, like in New York City. I had many people who considered themselves my friends. My family lived all there, but I was incredibly lonely. And you described this loneliness like I felt ashamed of that I had lost all this money. So it was almost, the loneliness was kind of triggered a little bit by this shame. And you say loneliness and shame go hand in hand. Loneliness can make you feel as if there's something wrong with you. I really felt there was something wrong with me. I lost everything. I was losing my home, and I was depressed, and I couldn't sleep. So I would literally walk all night because I just couldn't sleep, and I had no motivation. People would call me, but I didn't want to talk to anybody because it was like a self-inflicted loneliness. I because of this shame, and then shame at feeling lonely about it. And I didn't have any ability to connect to anybody because I was so depressed and so on. And then there's another kind of loneliness I feel, which you also mentioned, which is I'm a very outgoing introvert. And I think people don't understand what introvert means. I think they think that introvert means, oh, you're shy, and other people are really extroverted. They are exuberant and great at a party and whatever. And I'm not shy at all. I could go up to anybody and talk to them. I have no fear doing public speaking. I perform comedy and in front of groups of people. And one-on-one, I feel I'm good with people. But if I'm like at a dinner party where there's like, let's say 10 people, or if I'm at a party at someone's house, and again, about, let's say between 5 and 20 people, there'll come a point. So being an introvert means you lose energy with social interaction, and at some point you have to regenerate. And extrovert, from what I understand, you gain energy from social interaction. Again, you might be a shy extrovert and an outgoing introvert, but it's just how people gain energy and recoup it. And so sometimes I'm in a situation where I like all the people, I want them to like me, but then all of a sudden I hit a tipping point where I've lost my energy, and I need to rejuvenate that energy, and it's not the right moment for it. The party's still going, the dinner's still happening, and then I shut down. And I even know in my head, okay, I've probably said my last words for the evening. But then that's where the loneliness kicks in, because then I start wondering, has anyone noticed this about me? Like, why can't I talk to anybody? Why am I like this? Just make small talk, but I can't even do that. I'm literally shut down. I have no energy left, even though I might have been the life of the party, an hour earlier. And in those situations, I feel incredibly lonely, particularly if they're ongoing. Like if your social group hangs out longer than you're able to hold on to your energy, and if they do that on a regular basis, you're going to feel lonely most of the time, even though you're with people you like and you're friends with, and it's your community and so on. So though I would say on a regular basis, I have felt those two types of loneliness many times, but not the type where I have nobody around me, because I think I'm so afraid of having no one around me that all the times I've been single in my life, I've actively sought out, friends or dates or things to do or whatever, because I know I'm really good for short bursts of time because I'm an outgoing introvert.
Yeah, I can resonate with that, because I think I'm an outgoing introvert as well. I mean, I need my alone time. And I think it's an important distinction to make, right? That loneliness is not necessarily the same thing as being alone, physically isolated. So, and I think the loneliness that hurts the most is is the loneliness when you're surrounded by other people, because that's when the shame comes in. That's when the like, what is wrong with me that I have all these people around me. I have colleagues, I have, friends, and I'm at this dinner party, and then, I feel just so out of place, and I feel like I don't belong here, and nobody maybe sees me or understands me. Right. So that, I think that's an important, and also what you described, the shame that when you went bankrupt and, losing your house and business and all the things, and feeling that maybe people, kind of didn't want to be around you because you had failed in a way, in some people's view, which I don't believe, but so you felt that shame, which maybe made you maybe also retract from people, right? Because you felt the shame, and that sort of, it's a vicious cycle of
Yeah, and maybe people are
loneliness.
judging me in those situations, and that made me lose trust of my
Yeah.
social interactions as well.
Yeah.
And on top of being depressed, when you're not making the most rational decisions, maybe I lost trust a little too much in people, and that happens to me a lot. Like if I write an article and a lot of people don't like it, you typically, when that happens, you don't hear from the people who like the article. You only hear
Yeah.
from the maniacs who want to reach out and tell you how much they hate you.
Yeah.
And then I lose trust again. Like, is everyone like this? Like, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
And and you talk about this. So, you have a section, what to do, and identify which dimension of connection you're lacking. And you talk about the intimate or emotional connections,
Yeah.
the relational connections like friends or family, and the collective connections. I think for me, it's numbers 1 and 2. Like I don't ever feel like I don't belong. I don't really care about belonging in my community for some reason. And then you say, discover your self-worth, which is incredibly important in both
Yeah.
the situations I described.
Yeah.
And reach out. I don't know how to do, and maybe you could tell me if it's useful or not. I don't know. I don't understand reach out, because sometimes I don't know how.
And I think that's a really important point that you bring up, because to me, the loneliness, so many people tell you that, oh, you're feeling lonely. Well, reach out more, call up people, people, call them up. And you can't do that until you sort of rediscovered your self-worth, until you worked on the first, like the connection with yourself first.
And
So
people
that's-
always say that,
right?
but that's really hard.
It's really hard.
Like,
Yeah.
how do you do that? Like, and look, I've had to do it for myself, but what are some ways of thinking about that?
Well, I think you talk about that a lot in your work as well. I mean, think about your book titled "Choose Yourself," right? Isn't
Yeah.
that all about your self-worth and how to build your self-esteem and self-confidence and self-worth?
Right, exactly. It's how you can do that without the permission of others.
Yeah.
So a classic example, two classic examples. If you want a job at Google, someone at Google has to choose you. Or if you want to write a book and publish it with a publisher, someone at the publisher has to choose you.
Yeah.
And my view is, in almost every situation where you're feeling that desperate anxiety that someone should choose you, you could often take steps to choose yourself. And part of those steps is building a foundation of self-worth in a variety of ways. Like, you be healthy, you tame your emotional partnerships and connections and so on. But it's difficult. I call it a daily practice, because if I don't do it every day, I quickly slip down the ladder and
absolutely.
lose that self-worth.
I agree with you. It is a daily practice, and a multiple daily practice. And it's a decision that at least for me, I have to make that decision every day, right?
Like, how do you do it?
Like, it's really about like waking up in the morning and deciding. It's like you say, well, you have to, if you want that job at Google, or if you want to publish your book with an established publisher, you sort of sit there and wait for them to choose you. Or you can make that decision to just own it and just do things and take the next step forward, even if you don't know what's going to happen next, right? So you have to, for me anyway, that is it's part of that choosing yourself every single day and deciding that today I don't know the 10 next steps in my life, but I know the first one. So I'm going to do that. So if it is to write a book and publish a book, start writing.
That's really interesting because let's just make it very simple. If you're in a bad situation, meaning XYZ happened and now you're feeling lonely and you don't know what to do. So it feels complicated in your head. What do I do? I'm in this networking party and I can't talk, or I'm locked down because of COVID. I can't meet or talk to anybody and I don't know anybody. The key is not to go, broad on this, but to go very small. So, I could just turn to the person next to me and ask them what they're working on if I'm at the dinner party. Like, think of like 2 or 3 moves ahead. Like, and this happens in games a lot. Like, let's say you're playing poker and you're down to just a few chips and everyone else has a lot of chips. You're not gonna go crazy. You're gonna say, okay, here's what I'm gonna do the next few hands. I'm just gonna wait for a great hand, and everything else I'm gonna fold if it's not costing me money. And that's a kind of a small strategy. You're just focusing on the next few hands. Or in tennis, your opponent is getting you. You just want to get the ball back over the net a few more times and see if the opponent messes up a little bit.
Yeah.
In chess, you have a losing position. Can I make 2 or 3 moves without thinking of overall strategy of the game? Can I make 2 or 3 moves where I'm not going to lose immediately? And so here what you're saying is, in a situation that feels global about my loneliness, that feels desperate, just what are 2 or 3 things I can do to, micro alleviate that loneliness? And usually there's a way. But again, you have to pick correctly. Like I remember one time, so when this is 2002, I was dead broke. I was losing my house and I had a new baby, and everybody said, just okay. And I was just so depressed and lonely. I mean, everyone said, just play with your baby. Like babies always make you feel good. That did not make me feel good at all, because babies are hard work. And so I had to really focus on the baby. But at the same time, I couldn't stop really focusing on my problems because I didn't have any self-worth and I was so anxious. And I couldn't figure it out. It took me a long time to even begin to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, it's a lot about having a daily practice. And when I feel really low, there's something that I think I mentioned also last time that I do is I sit down and I don't even want to think about the next step or whatever I'm going to do, right?
Yeah.
I certainly don't want to reach out to anyone. And I sit down and I have this like little journal, and then I write, out the question, and I write, how can I love myself a little more today? And just writing that question down and looking at the words and just feeling those words, because when I feel really down like that, I don't love myself very much, So just writing that and asking myself, how can I love myself a little more today? And, and it's different from day to day, right? Maybe that day I need to just lie down on the floor and take a nap, or maybe I need to just take my dog and go for a walk. It all depends, So I decide on maybe 2 or 3 things that I can do for myself that day to feel a little better and to respect and honor myself. And that always shifts something in me that takes me out from that very, very dark place.
So there's 2 parts of this. One is you write down, how can I love myself a little better today? And then you take action where you you do something like you take a nap, you treat yourself to something, which shows your brain that you're taking care of yourself, that you love yourself. And so your brain's like, oh, okay, I don't need to feel as lonely because she loves me.
Yeah.
And I mentioned it's 2 steps because how important is the writing part? Because I've heard that is very important.
Yeah. To me, anyway, it is. It's something about that. not writing it on the computer or on my phone, but actually writing it out with a pen, on the paper and seeing the words, to me
I
anyway,
do the
that
same
does
thing.
something.
Here's my where I almost never physically write except on this waiter's pad every morning where I write ideas down. So
And that's, by the way, is another, and this is something that I learned from you, from your last book, Skip the Line, and which I really love. And I tell everyone
you.
to read your book and to do this, because it's really made such a big difference. It's when you're really in a really dark place, for me anyway, when I write down ideas, and maybe I don't get to the 10 ideas, but at least I get to a few ideas, right? And then you also write about that these ideas they don't have to be about you. They can be ideas for other people, right? So maybe
Right.
I'm not in a state of loving myself enough to think about good ideas for me, but maybe I can think about a good idea for my friend, right? And I share that idea with my friend. And that just, at least what it does for me, is that it takes me down from my miserable story in my head, and it gets me like more into the present moment and away from my problems and focusing on someone else instead. So I find that that's extremely helpful.
Maybe part of the writing is because, like, the reason the writing part is important is because I always say you can't think your way out of depression, or you can't think your way to wealth, for instance. You have to take action also. Yes, you have to think of ideas and what you can do and so on, but there always has to be action components. You can't think in your head, well, I'm going to love myself better today, and then that's it. You did your job for the day. You have to write it down and then take action. And even the writing it down is a small form of action. And so, like you say, it's a small step. It's not just telling yourself something. It's actually the first small step of loving yourself is an action, writing it down.
Yeah.
But what other actions do you do when you're, or what should I do when I'm, let's say, at a dinner party and don't know, and I'm starting to feel like anxious and bored because I lost all my energy and the introversion is kicking in?
I am, before, I would tell you to just, stay there, pull through, talk to people. Today, I don't do that. I usually try to remove myself from a party where I feel the energy is low, and I don't get, it's all about relational energy. And that is a component of the whole loneliness connection discussion, is relational energy. So relational energy is really just the energy that is created in every single social interaction that we have. And you know how you sometimes you spend time with people and afterwards you feel completely drained. You feel like bad about yourself maybe. And I used to think that there was something wrong about me when I felt like that, and that I had to sort of like make efforts to sort of maybe see that person even more, to try to figure out like what did I do wrong. But today I know that there's just people that I shouldn't be around. And then I try to surround myself with people who actually bring me energy, that make me feel good about myself, or challenge me, or something that just sparks something, right? That is positive. That's
so important because look, you're a writer, and you've written several books, 2 books or more. I know of the 2 books, the Nobel Peace Prize one, Betraying the Nobel, and then the Lone Wolf Killer book. And I will say, writing is a competitive sport. Yes, there's beauty and art to it, but people are reading your book as opposed to reading another. So there's like a competitive element. And in a competitive sport, you need to train and be healthy and in physical shape and everything. And you need to be around other people who bring up your competitive juices. Not people competing with you, but people who are supporting you, and you're supporting them, and you're in this together. And otherwise, if you're with a bunch of losers and, they're all smoking crack in some crack house, you're probably not going to write a successful book. But unless you write a book about surviving crack addiction or something, I don't know. But there's sometimes when you can't get out of, like, let's say, my wife, to her credit, she is a shy extrovert. So we're a good team. I'm able to go into a situation, bust the door down and say, we're here. And then I just ran out of energy and she takes over from there. Like everybody, she's shy going in, but then everybody loves her and she could talk to everybody and has things to say. And she's very giving and she does it very well. So sometimes you can't just remove yourself from a situation because you're with somebody and it's hard. Like sometimes I'll just go to the bathroom for a really long time, but then I don't want people to think, what's he doing in the bathroom? Smoking crack? Like what's going on? And so what do you do there?
I tend to find one person in that room that I can talk to, because I think when you're introvert like us, the whole like small talk with a bunch of people, it really drains me. But if I can have a deeper conversation with just one person, that kind of saves me. So I try to like sit in a corner with just one person, or focus on, one person around the table, or, something like that. That's usually saves me.
So loneliness is important to acknowledge when it's occurring. And there's many different types.
Yeah.
Like whether you feel bad around someone, that's a very subtle thing to notice about yourself, because it might be with a boss. You always feel bad when you're having dinner with them, or if it's with friends or whatever. Or there's the loneliness of depression. There's the loneliness if you're isolated. There's a loneliness of, as you mentioned, there's if you're lacking a partner, or if you don't have enough friends, or if you want to be in a group and you're not finding status there. So there's various types of loneliness. Oh, I wanted to ask, how many friends do you think is the average person should have? Not that there's a should, and I'm not looking necessarily for an exact number, but if you have one, that would be great, and then I'll know. But what do you think about when you think like, oh, do I have enough friends? Do I not have enough friends?
Well, I used to think that I needed many, 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 many friends. I collected friends. And then it turned out that none of them were close friends. So I think, actually, I think that you only need one really good friend. And
Really?
Yeah. And everything else is kind of bonus.
And do you think you can make friends later in life? Like a lot of people have friends from their childhood, but let's say you're 60 years old. Could you make a new friend that's such a good friend that this person will appear at your funeral?
Absolutely. I absolutely, I hope so. No, but I do believe so. And you know what? I've changed, and this is very recent. I've changed my perspective and view on friendships. I've moved around
curious.
a lot, and I used to be really jealous of, all the people who had close friends from childhood and from they were babies. And I used to think that was the thing that I wanted, right? And I couldn't have that because I had moved around so much. So I always wanted to, I would hold on to those really old friendships, that the oldest ones that at least that I had. And then, and recently, actually just a couple of weeks ago, I reunited with some girlfriends that I've actually known we sort of lost touch for many, many years. But now that I moved back to Norway 5 years ago. And so I reconnected with some of these older friends. And we have known each other for 39 years. So that's a, reasonably old friendship to me. And then, realizing that we have completely gone in different directions. We really don't have, much to speak about anymore. And we don't really have like common values or common, anything. And also, discovering that, if people don't wish you well, if you don't get the feeling that they wish you well and they want, and they're happy for you in whatever you're doing, right? Then I don't think it's worth to maintain that relationship. And I think that, and I spoke to another friend about this, who is a more recent friend who I've known for a couple of years. And she says that you can move, you have these sort of like circles of people in your life. And you have that very, very inner circle with your very close ones. Maybe, for you, that would be Robin, right? And your kids. And for me, that's my husband, Mike.
And Jay, who's on this podcast listening.
Absolutely. Yes, exactly. And then you have the circle around that one, which is more sort of the closer friends and people. And then you have the circle outside of that again. So you can move people, in and out of different circles. You don't have to tell them you're doing that, but you can keep a little bit of distance to those who maybe are not like, you don't need to burn any bridges. But I'm not maintaining. I made a decision recently is that I'm not going to maintain relationships and friendships just because they remind me of something in my childhood or in my youth, out of nostalgia almost.
Yeah. So like right now, how many, let's say, close friends do you have? Like people you could call up and tell both. I saw Jordan Peterson give a talk the other day on YouTube, and he basically says you want people who you can tell bad news to, and they don't immediately say, "Oh yeah, that happened to my cousin's friend also," and then they go on for 45 minutes telling that story because you didn't really get anything out of telling them your bad news. You wanted support and help, and instead they told you their own story. And he said you should be able to tell them bad news and good news. Like they should be happy for you and help you celebrate when you have good news, and they should really listen to you when you have bad news. And he said that's a good friend. Mm-hmm. So how many people do you feel like you have like that in your life?
I think I have 3 people like that in my life today.
That's good.
And that may change, right, in a couple of years. But I mean, and now I'm not hanging on to it either. So if someone sort of removes herself or himself from and they're not, responding or they're not, reaching out anymore, then they will sort of be removed and there maybe be some others. So I'm not clinging on to friendships or relationships. And I think relationships are really there to absolutely support us and be happy for us and wish us well. They're also there to make us grow. And not all of our relationships or friendships are always comfortable. A friend is also someone who can tell you the truth, when with something that you need to hear that you don't necessarily want to hear,
Yeah, right. No, that's a good definition as well. And then let's say you're going out with somebody. Let's say you're having a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you're not feeling that this is the right thing for you, but it's very hard those things are always very hard to know what to do and whether to end it or not. Like, what do you do after that? Like, and that's a kind of loneliness as well. Mm-hmm. What have you ever been in that situation? Like, what tactics do you use in that situation?
It's been a while since I've been in that situation because I've been married for 15 years. So it's been a while, but I used to, back in those days when I was dating and, we broke up, with a boyfriend, I would immediately surround myself with lots of friends and lots of girlfriends. That's what I would do. And back in those days, I had a lot of people around me all the time because I felt that I needed to be, I was incapable of being in my own company and feeling well in my own company. I was, it was horrible to have even one evening alone with myself. Do you know what I mean? Have you been in that situation?
Yeah, I can't handle it.
Yeah.
So I immediately, like, I go out every night. But what if you were in an economic lockdown and you can't go out every night and you really are just lonely?
Yeah. Well, then you should,
in the purest sense.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's when, first of all, you should get into my course, into my online masterclass, and get some support there from me in the community, and also work on the self-worth and work on connecting with yourself so that you are actually capable of being happy in your own company. Not that you should be happy in your own company all the time, but at least that you are capable, right?
Yeah, maybe list things you enjoy doing by yourself and try to do them.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
like you said, take a nap if you're feeling tired. And
Yeah.
I like these, like loneliness is very complicated. I like these questions you ask, like, do you ever feel as if you don't have the support you need? Do you ever feel rejected or invisible, exhausted, burned out, depressed, like you don't have anything to live for? If you answered yes to one or more of these questions, chances are you suffer from loneliness. And 60% of American adults often or always feel lonely. And you make the
Yep.
point, which is very true, because I was this person. The person with 5,000 friends on Facebook could be much lonelier than you or me. And I
Yeah.
was definitely that person for large chunks of time. And again, identify, is it a intimate loneliness? Is it relational, like not enough friends? Is it collective? Take actions to discover self-worth. Reach out to people as much as you can. I love the take small actions if you don't know what to do, if you're feeling lost. Because often when you're depressed, you don't know what to do.
Yep.
And of course, most important, people, Jay, I want you to come on the podcast. Jay, can you open up your video? So before we talk to Jay, I also want to remind people, how can people find your course?
So on my website, unniturrettini.com, it's on the website there. You can just click on it and download. There's a free guide there, actually. You can also, from my Instagram account, I'm the only one in the world with my name. So UNNITURRETTINI. So you can find me and contact me through my Instagram or Facebook or my website and get access to the course.
So in part 2, not only will Unni give more specific techniques for dealing with loneliness, but we drill down and find out if Jay is lonely, a young lad from Malaysia stuck here in the big city. And Jay's answers and particularly Unni's answers to Jay were enlightening for me. So stay tuned for part 2. You could download it today.
Whether in person or remote, open communication with your doctor is key to managing any condition, including heart failure.
How have you been feeling? I'm okay.
Both are great options to continue having open conversations with your doctor about how you're feeling.
I've had less energy.
And when you speak openly with your doctor, they're better equipped to help. Visit heartfailuretalks.com to learn more.